women's quadrangular T20 series in Visakhapatnam is underway. India A and B began their campaigns with a win, and I'm here to give you a recap of day one. There was a different feel to proceedings on Sunday. I guess international cricket can do that to you. Seeing young players in their international colours, the West Indies in their maroon and India in that blue. There was a buzz in the air. The first game, of course, was between India A and the West Indies. Shradhu took the new ball for India A and she hit her straps immediately. Bowled those typically hard lengths, very, very disciplined, and got India A off to a really, really good start. So India A worked with largely 7-2 fields through the day. That changed to 6-3 once the spinners came in. And they bowled relatively wide lines, basically taking one side of the field out of play. I think it kind of helped that the West Indies were quite nervy. They didn't really move their feet. They just stayed on leg stump and continued to waft outside the off stump. Got played and missed a fair bit. And, I think India A just dominated from the word go. Jintimani Kalita was used as a middle over enforcer. A little like Kate Cross, she came in and took the first wicket for India A. And the celebrations were massive. You could just hear everyone cheering. The cheer of "Come on, India" really rung the air. There just seemed like a different energy around this group, and it was great to watch. The West Indies opener Chanel saw anchored the innings with a 41. It came off 60-odd deliveries. But there was very little power on display. She milked the singles once she got settled in. Joseph and Glasgow came in the middle order, tonked a 6 each, and tried to provide a bit of acceleration, but it wasn't enough. I think West Indies kind of stuttered their way to 85 for 7. Sonam Yadav came in at the back end, basically in the last over. She picked up 3 wickets in the final over of the innings. To finish with really impressive figures. So India A weren't really challenged in the field. I thought they fielded quite brilliantly. People dived around, saved a lot of boundaries. They took some smart catches as well. So an overall disciplined effort by India A. And in the chase, 86 was never going to be enough for a team with Shweta Sehrawat. The form that she's in, she came out, carded a 28 ball 47 and absolutely smoked the living daylights out of the West Indies bowlers. They couldn't find their lines. They sprayed a lot down the leg side. Shweta Sehrawat, of course, played in her typical style, slayed through the offside. She swept very well as well. She played an impressive flick through mid-wicket, but she was fed outside that off stump and absolutely carded the bowling around. And it was quite an interesting India A innings because on one end you had Shweta Sehrawat, who was in the form of her life, or who is in the form of her life, and at the other end was Roshni Kiran, who struggled to find her timing. She couldn't hit the ball off the square. She did play one really good cover drive, but otherwise she really struggled to get through her innings. But what I found very impressive about that partnership was that Shweta kept encouraging her, kept talking to her through that innings. And of course, in typical style, she finished it off with the 6 down the ground, sealed a 10-wicket win for India A. They chased down the target of 86 in 12.4 overs and sealed their first points. On to the second game of the day, India B versus Sri Lanka. It was an extremely exciting encounter. It was a nail-biting thriller. Went down to the final over. Took some extraordinary fielding for India B to get over the line. But it involved a vibrant team that is Sri Lanka. They are a team after my own heart. Shashikala Sirivardhane is their head coach, and I took to them as soon as I saw them just before the warm-up. Shashikala was sitting with the kit bag, kind of taking out all the equipment that was required for the warm-up, the 2 bats placed together, stumps, the balls for knocking were put in a bucket, the balls for bowling were put separately. She had her cones, she set up everything well before the warm-up had started. The trainer was on the other side, had all his bands laid out neatly. There were rollers lined up, there were all sorts of things, wonderfully organized. The team came in, finished their warm-ups, and placed the bands exactly as they were. And when Sri Lanka finished their warm-up, it did not look like they had used any of the stuff. But so this is a team after my own OCD heart. So, Sri Lanka, you've won a fan, but back to the cricket, it was an extraordinary game. It was kind of a competition that started even before the toss. Like, as the captains were walking into toss, the Sri Lankan players were in their dugout and shouted, "Come on, Sri Lanka." There were a couple of Indian stragglers who hadn't gone back into the dressing room to change. They started shouting, "Come on, India," as well. And there was a bit of a shouting match as to who is the louder cheerer. And of course, Sri Lanka won out. But yeah, that's kind of where the rivalry began. But India B was sent in to bat, and they got off to an interesting start. Brishti Maji and Ishwari Savkar weren't quite able to pierce the field. Sri Lanka fielded brilliantly at the start, dived around, showed great energy, and their pacers were quite impressive as well. Vishmi Gunaratne at cover took a really good reflex catch to dismiss Brishti, and that brought in Trisha, who I thought would have opened in this game, came in at number 3, and she injected the required bit of energy into that Indian innings. She came out, found the boundary really early, also was really aggressive between the wickets. I think that was the most impressive bit about the way she batted for me. The fact that she was constantly looking for runs, the fact that she was dropping and running, and she was able to pierce the gaps beautifully. She was also hitting the cover off the ball, but also able to find the gaps. And she scored a quick fire 49 and shared a 72-run second wicket partnership with Ishwari Savkar, who also scored a steady 30. She kind of played probably a really good one-day anchors innings, kept one end up. She played some impressive sweep shots after she settled in, and those two kind of set the platform for India B. And then Nikki Prasad and Mannat Kashyap came out, smashed a few sixes, and gave the innings the momentum it required. It's almost like those India colours have unlocked something for her, but she was fantastic with the bat, took India to over that 120-run mark. Sitting in the stands, I think the general consensus was that India would boss the contest, that Sri Lanka probably didn't have enough firepower. A few of the people, of course, had heard of the name of Vishmi Gunaratne, so some of the parents who had come to watch the games were a little worried of what she could possibly do, but India A were put under the pump quite early by Vishmi and opener, the wicketkeeper Sumudu. I thought both of them played some really, really good shots. I remember Sumudu hit a really good back foot punch. I think it was off Vasuvi Fishta. Really good. She looked like she'd gotten the pace of the track. It was a very good track to bat on. And both of them looked in complete control until, of course, Mannat Kashyap came in and completely changed the complexion of things. She got Sumudu run out at the non-strikers and in her very first over. And the very next ball, Vishmi Gunaratne was caught by Brishti Maji at mid-off, trying to hit Mannat over the top. So that seemed to shift things in India B's favour. So that middle order of Sri Lanka, full of left-handers, came out and batted with real positivity. Sanjana and Rashmi found the singles. They turned over the strike. I thought Rashmi played really attackingly. She was able to find the boundary, and then of course Nikki Prasad turned to her spinners and they got knocked around. Chansey got smashed around. Mithila Vinod wasn't able to pick up a wicket in the only over she bowled. Najla got hit around, and Nikki had to turn to a bowler who had not bowled a lot in the Challenger Trophy but had a good day until then, Trisha. So Nikki Prasad from one end and Trisha from the other, they bowled 8 overs in tandem and conceded 34 runs in total and kind of dried up the runs for Sri Lanka. It meant that the required rate continued to rise. But once those 8 overs were over, Nikki was looking for bowlers. She had to give the ball to Najla. There was, of course, Mannath to bank on, but she needed someone to control the other end. But what the spell between Nikki and Trisha had done was kind of lift the required run rate to an extent that Sri Lanka had to find a boundary every over, which meant they had to continue to take risks. But it seemed like the batting order has enough firepower to be able to do that. Unfortunately, with 17 runs required of that final over, it did feel like Manali would have the power to be able to do it, but Najla took an absolute screamer at long on to send her back. She went running forward and dived full stretch to pick up a really, really good catch. And with her wicket, it meant that Sri Lanka didn't have someone to come in and be able to find a six immediately. So it was an unfortunate end for them, but they fought really hard. It was such a good game to watch. I think the victory meant that much more to India B because they really had to earn it. So it was a really eventful first day at the women's Under-19 T20 Quadrangular series here in Vizag. I'm sure the days to come there'll be much, much more really quality action. So stay tuned. I will be here and continue to bring you some insights, some videos. So stay tuned, guys.